USOs simply means unidentified submerged objects, water-based UFOs or water-based UAP. That's it. And, you know, I'd heard of this type of phenomenon for many, many years. It's always been very interesting. I mean, to me, intrinsically, it's interesting to hear a story about an object that comes out of the ocean, making a big display like that. And I thought, I mean, how many of these stories exist? I have a website with a lot of amazing members, and they'll ask me questions. One person asked me a question about a particular case from 1945 near the Aleutian Islands, a little island called Adak Island out there. And there is a case from the summer of 1945 where a U.S. transport ship, the Pacific War was still happening. They were returning from Japan to Seattle, and they were by the Aleutians, and apparently an object appeared to have come out of the water, a disc-shaped object, circled around the ship twice and then takes off. So that was a case that was somewhat known to me and is known to other researchers, and I just did like a little bit of extra research, and I'll put together like a little video, things like that from my website. But I got really intrigued by it, and I thought to myself, this is 3 years ago, so in 2022, I thought, what other good cases are there? Like, I just wanted to pull them together. And I started to realize there were a couple of books that had been done on this. It was a book back in 1970 by an American researcher named Ivan Sanderson, a very good book. There was another very good book by the recently deceased researcher named Carl Feind, who wrote a very good book on water and UFOs. But not much else. There was a couple of others here and there. And I thought, I want to collect them. How many can I find? Like, that was where I started. And are they good? And I just got more and more into it. I started doing more of these little mini presentations for my website, and it just became, by the summer of 2022, it was kind of a mania. And I thought, I'll see if I'll do a book, see what I come up with. And that turned out into what will be a 3-volume project. The first volume I just published a couple of months ago, and that will be followed by the other 2, which will be out this year. I've collected about 700 cases. There's many more than that, I've no doubt. I eliminated quite a few in looking for them because I really wanted cases that had some meat on the bones that you could kind of work with and give a good description of. So I've got about just under 700 from around the world, and some of them go back kind of far, not into the distant ancient. The first really good case that I consider good is actually only from 1717, so like 300 years ago. It's a pretty good case, though, and then they become better over the years, a lot more detail. And I just started collecting them. I wanted to breathe like fresh life. 99% of them are completely forgotten, even by like experienced researchers. I think they're just completely, they've gone by the boards. And I thought they deserve a fresh retelling of them. And I wanted to do that. And then it just morphed into more and more things. I ended up getting a really great illustrator, a man named Alan Levine, who's a wonderful man, and did beautiful illustrations for this project. And I did a bunch of other things. I wanted to put each one on a map. I did that, and I ended up doing a statistical analysis that I did not anticipate doing when I started, but that became kind of a significant thing too. And that taught me more about this phenomenon, just looking at some of the statistics that seemed to jump out at me. So all in all, like you're seeing this phenomenon evolve over, especially the last couple of 100 years. It's like a little dance, like where they're observing us, we're observing them. And there is reason to believe that they've adapted some of their behaviors due to our radical transformation of our own technology, especially over the last century. I mean, it's kind of an amazing thing. You know, you think of where we were in the oceans a little over 100 years ago. The first operational submarine didn't deploy until the year 1900. And that was just like, you know, barely able to get in there. So we were not really going deep into the water until the 20th century. So
now we have hundreds of them circling the oceans, loaded with nuclear warheads.
Exactly. So that's a major, like, imagine you're them. Let's say you are them. You're here You're watching these humans, these observant, intelligent, multi-fingered humans who can manipulate their environment, who are now organized into these collective aggressive communities we call nations, peering over the fence at each other with deadly weapons that could end the entire planet's existence. And you're watching this and you're realizing, okay, so they're probably this far away from developing strong AI, from quantum computing, and from leaping into our world. Like, when's that going to happen? Right? Because like you can see the whole trajectory. You know that like a few generations ago, they were all living in wooden huts, and now, wow, like here we are.
To reach the singularity.
Yes, exactly. So I have little doubt that any observing intelligence, like they can see this whole thing play out. And so they're watching. But I have no doubt that we have our own little unique variations on the theme of developing intelligence. Maybe we're more aggressive. Maybe we're not as, I don't know. But we're certainly very aggressive with each other. We're highly territorial. So they're watching all of this, and they're seeing, 1950s, we start developing nuclear submarines that can stay underwater basically forever. Mm-hmm. And we develop these underground sonar systems that are mapping all activity, or increasingly more and more underwater activity, including anomalous activity, right? Mm-hmm. And not just Soviet or Russian subs, but everything.
Yeah.
And so they have to adapt. And I think when I was looking at the statistics of this, this whole thing happened because I finished writing all the cases, and I'm talking with my wife, and she's like, it'd be a great idea if for each case you had like a bunch of categories, so that someone could just like look at the categories, like what color was the craft? What shape was the craft?
Yes.
What was it doing with the water? Was it under the water? Did it emerge from the water? How close are the witnesses? And I'm like, damn it, that's a really good idea. I didn't want to do it because it was a lot of extra work. I had to go back over every case and siphon out that information. But it was a great idea, and I did do it. And I'm very glad I did it, because then that allowed me to put all of that into a spreadsheet and look at like almost 700 cases and like 20. It's a big spreadsheet.
So it's like a database you've built.
Yeah, and anyone can download it. It's a free download. I have it
cool.
linked on my website. You can go check it out. But basically, I'm an amateur with statistical analysis. I can't pretend that I'm some genius at it, but you can still see things. So like one thing I noticed is one category was I broke it down into day or night. Simple. Did this happen when the sun was out or when it was dark? Like very simple little metric there. And one thing I noticed was that up until around 1967, 68, it was almost exactly 50-50 day versus night. And then suddenly, starting in the late 60s...
USOs.
USOs, exactly. Starting in the late 60s, it goes to 75% at night. And it remained that to this day, 75%. Now, I mean, does that mean I just have too small a data sample and I need to get more cases? Maybe. Could it be that I was just somehow not selecting a broad spectrum of cases? I mean, all of that's possible. I don't think so. I tried to pick what I thought were the best and most meaty cases, and something seems to have happened in the late 60s.
How do you go about mining all this information? Do you just look for and just scrub the internet for cases involving USOs, or do you interview specific people, ask them?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Mostly pulling out the information from, there are a couple of websites where there's a lot of information. So one is the National UFO Reporting Center that's run by a very wonderful man named Peter Davenport, who's run it for years. And they've got 100,000 or more cases there that he's collected going back many, many years. So that's important. MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, has a database which they graciously allowed me to use their database, which is nice because I'm not a MUFON investigator, but they knew what kind of work I was doing. And they said, yes, you can. And then I mentioned Carl Feint earlier. He had a website where he collected a bunch of these cases. So I looked at all of those. And then there's books and like out-of-print magazines from the 1970s that I'd look for and just get them and find these cases.
Where are people seeing these USOs?
Everywhere.
For the most part, is there one spot in the world where they seem to be mostly condensed to or confined to? And second question is, what kind of people are reporting these?
Yeah, there are hot spots. We probably, part of the problem with USOs is we're all like, we live on the land. We're landlubbers. And so usually you're not out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So That's a problem right there. Navies are, the U.S. Navy is, but they don't like to talk. You'll get Navy stories from some Navy guy like 20, 30 or more years after they retire, when sometimes anonymously they will report something to some website somewhere.
Yeah.
Like that happens. And I've tried to collect all of those. They're very interesting. But basically we are, so when people see these, they're usually on the coast. Or maybe they're on a lake or a river, but if it's an ocean base, which is most of them, it's along the coast. That's where people...
What about like oil rigs?
Yeah, a couple of them. There's a good one from the Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of America? Gulf of Mexico? What am I
Gulf
supposed
of
to say?
America, brother.
Gulf of America.
That's where we are, right there. Gulf's right there.
Exactly. So there's quite a few from the Gulf here, quite a few. And one of my favorite ones, this is from the National UFO Reporting Center. It's from 2017. It's not that long ago. A guy operating on a rig rode into New Fork, the website, and he described this. He said, I was with a bunch of other guys on our rig, and there was another rig, he said, a couple of miles over this way, and in between this humongous, gargantuan, like football field plus size object comes out of the water, dripping water, flying saucer, disc shape.
Football field?
That's what he wrote. We're watching it drip water. We're kind of blown away, and it just zips off. It's gone. Now, how do you investigate that? It's almost impossible. So Peter Davenport wrote as an addendum to this case. He said, I spoke with the witness on the phone. Peter will do that sometimes. He said, I found him to be highly credible, highly this and that. And like, apparently this was a very well-spoken, believable individual. Peter found him credible. And that's really all that we have on this. But it's a pretty interesting story. And I read the account. And that's one of the cases that goes into the third volume of my study.
Did that corroborate any other accounts? Were there any other similar accounts with football fields? Really?
Yeah. Also, not just USOs, but you get UFO cases of gargantuan size objects that have been reported over the years. You wonder, like, what are they doing? It's like a small city.